Cass Eliot carried one of the most painful secrets of her life all the way to her grave: the truth about her child's father, a truth so explosive that even the people closest to her only uncovered it decades later. Millions adored her as the vibrant, booming voice of the mamas and the papas, yet almost no one knew the lonely, battered heart that hid behind her smile. On stage, she shined like a star. Offstage, she lived in shadows, shadows created by heartbreak, ridicule, and the suffocating pressure of an industry that worshipped thinness more than talent. Born Ellen Naomi Cohen in September 1941 in Baltimore to a financially struggling family of Russian Jewish immigrants, Cass grew up surrounded by love, but also by judgment. Even as a child, her weight drew whispers, jokes, and expectations. She had the voice of a giant, but carried the insecurities forced on her by a world that valued appearances more than ability. Yet, despite the harshness around her, something in Cass glowed. A sparkle, a humor, a defiance, the kind of personality that made people fall in love with her before she even sang a note. High school unlocked something powerful inside her. Theater became her escape, and performing became her oxygen. Reinventing herself, she adopted the stage name Cass Eliot, combining the name of comedian Peggy Cass and a meaningful lost friend. Reinvention became her weapon, talent became her shield, and New York became her battlefield. She dropped out of school, packed her courage, and moved to the city in search of Broadway dreams, only to be rejected over and over. When she lost a major role to a young, unknown Barbra Streisand, Cass realized that acting might break her beyond repair. So she turned to music, hoping it would be kinder. It wasn't. Her first bands, the Big Three, and later, the Mugwumps, gave her brief flickers of success. But it was within the Mugwumps that she met the man who would silently haunt her heart for years: Denny Doherty. Cass fell in love with him, with the kind of love that consumes a soul. But the universe played cruel games with her life. Despite her feelings, Cass unexpectedly entered a marriage of convenience with another bandmate, James Hendricks, a fake marriage designed to help him avoid the draft, not a union of love. When the Mugwumps dissolved only months later, Cass was left emotionally unanchored, still longing for Doherty, but tied to no one. Meanwhile, Doherty joined forces with the married duo John and Michelle Phillips to form a new group, the New Journeymen. Cass wanted desperately to join, to be near the man she loved, and because her voice could lift the group to unimaginable heights, Doherty wanted her in. Michelle wasn't opposed, but John Phillips stood in the way, inventing excuses about her voice not fitting the arrangement, while secretly criticizing her weight behind closed doors. The truth was far uglier than the official story. Cass, desperate to prove herself, followed the group around, rehearsing informally, enduring humiliation, fetching drinks, being treated like a persistent nuisance rather than the missing piece of a hit-making puzzle. Yet, she kept showing up for her dream and for Doherty. Finally, destiny shifted. Depending on who tells the story, one of two events forced John Phillips to accept Cass. Either the group became so financially desperate that they needed her hospitality, and she used that moment to negotiate her way in. Or she survived a freak accident in the Virgin Islands, where a falling metal pipe struck her on the head and supposedly opened her voice into the higher register Phillips wanted. For decades, fans believed the pipe story. Only much later did insiders admit the truth. The story had been created to hide how deeply Phillips had fat-shamed her. But none of that mattered once her voice hit the microphone. With their new name, the Mamas and the Papas, the group exploded. California Dreamin', Monday, Monday, dream a little dream of me. The world fell in love with Cass's thunderous warmth. But behind the applause, her daily life was brutal. Her bandmates joked about her weight publicly, even writing it into lyrics like "no one's getting fat except Mama Cass," a line that branded her forever with a nickname she despised. Then came the betrayal that would break her heart completely. Cass had loved Denny Doherty quietly, fiercely, faithfully, but he fell into an affair with Michelle Phillips, the one woman Cass felt she could never compete with. When Doherty admitted it, Cass was shattered. She once confronted Michelle, saying, "You can have any man in the world. Why take the one I love?" She proposed to Doherty one drunken night, but he never answered. Love rejected her. Fame mocked her. Loneliness consumed her. Still, she sang, but the pain pushed her toward substances, emotional eating, dangerous diets, and erratic behavior. In London, she was briefly jailed after being accused of stealing apartment linens, though rumors swirled that the police were actually after her supplier, a man she may have been romantically involved with. The band canceled shows, tension grew, and little by little, Cass realized she was done letting others treat her like the punchline. Her solo hit, "Dream a Little Dream of Me," became her escape route. She left the band, stepping into a spotlight all her own, a spotlight brighter and heavier than she ever imagined. And with it began the chapter of her life filled with triumph, sabotage, motherhood, extreme dieting, illness, and a tragedy the world would never forget. Cass Eliot entered her solo era with fire in her heart and scars across her soul. Her breakout hit had given her wings, and Las Vegas offered her the stage she had waited her entire life for, a 3-week, 6-figure deal at Caesar's Palace. But with opportunity came crushing pressure. She was determined to be everything the world said she wasn't: beautiful, thin, powerful, worthy. She turned to a brutal crash diet, fasting for days a week for 7 months, losing nearly a third of her weight, but devastating her health. What tonsillitis, hemorrhaging vocal cords, mononucleosis, hepatitis. Her illnesses stacked up like warnings from a body begging for mercy. But Cass ignored them. She had a show to conquer. Her opening night was a catastrophe. Legends like Sammy Davis Jr., Jimi Hendrix, and Mia Farrow filled the audience, waiting for that soaring voice that defined an era. But when Cass stepped on stage, weak and trembling, hardly a sound came out. Her second performance was worse. Audiences walked out. Caesar's Palace canceled her contract immediately. Newsweek compared her debut to the sinking of the Titanic. Cass fell into a deep depression. But in the midst of this darkness, she had something pure: her daughter, Owen. Cass protected her fiercely, shielding her from the world, even firing nannies who grew too attached. She refused to reveal Owen's father, a mystery that fueled endless speculation. Rumors swirled about her lovers. Rumors swirled about darker connections. One rumor was especially disturbing: that Cass had once hosted Charles Manson at her home. In the chaotic Hollywood scene of the late 1960s, mingling with the wrong people was almost unavoidable. But after the horrifying Tate murders, even John Phillips accused Cass of introducing Manson to certain circles. It was unfair, it was cruel, but it stuck to her like tar. Her career tried to recover. Television specials followed the Mama Cass television program and Don't Call Me Mama anymore. But inside, she longed for something simpler: love, real love. In 1971, she married journalist Donald von Wiedenmann, a whirlwind romance that collapsed in 8 weeks, leaving her even more convinced she would never be truly wanted. Her health worsened, her dieting intensified, and in 1974, the cracks turned into fractures. Backstage at The Tonight Show, she collapsed. Doctors urged rest. Cass brushed it off with a joke, pretending it was low blood sugar. She didn't slow down. After a successful run of concerts at the London Palladium, she partied with Mick Jagger for his birthday, then attended 2 more gatherings the next morning and evening. Friends noticed she looked pale, exhausted, and short of breath. She dismissed their concern with her usual humor. That night, she went back to the London flat she was staying in, an apartment owned by singer Harry Nilsson. She closed the door, went to bed, and never woke up. Cass Eliot died at 32. The world woke up to headlines filled with cruelty and lies. Tabloids insisted she choked on a ham sandwich, a grotesque rumor born from fat phobia and spite. There was no sandwich in her throat, no evidence. Her heart simply gave out, strained by years of harsh dieting, stress, and untreated medical issues. The same room would claim the Who's drummer, Keith Moon, 4 years later, also at age 32. Her daughter Owen was raised by Cass's sister, Leah, and for decades, one question remained: who was Owen's father? Finally, years later, Michelle Phillips revealed the truth. The father was musician Chuck Day, the second guitarist behind hits like Monday and California Dreamin', a man Cass deeply cared for but kept hidden, perhaps to protect her daughter from judgment, or perhaps because Cass had learned the hard way that the world never treated her kindly. In 2022, Cass Eliot finally received her long-overdue star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Her family, her daughter and Michelle Phillips, stood proudly as her name was immortalized, a recognition that should have come decades earlier. Cass's life was tragic, beautiful, messy, and unforgettable. She fought against an industry that mocked her weight, a society that punished her for not being thin, and a world that never fully appreciated her genius until she was gone. When the Mamas and the Papas reunited for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1998, they needed 3 backup singers to even attempt to fill the void of her voice. They failed because there was, and will always be, only one Cass Eliot.